My DL drugged my coffee. At dinner, but my granddaughter switched our cups. The bitter almond smell hit my nostrils just as my daughter-in-law Rachel smiled that practiced smile of hers, the one she'd perfected over 12 years of marriage to my son David. But my 7-year-old granddaughter Lily had already switched our coffee cups when Rachel turned to grab the sugar bowl. 3 hours later, Rachel was in the ICU on a ventilator while I sat in the police station, calmly explaining how I'd survived what would have been my third accidental poisoning in 6 months. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a 72-year-old retired chemistry teacher ended up in a life-or-death chess match with the woman my son chose to marry. 6 months ago, I was living quite comfortably in my 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester County, the one my late husband Frank and I bought in 1979 for $67,000 that's now worth $2.3 million. I had my garden, my book club, my volunteer work at the hospital, and what I thought was a loving relationship with my only child David and his family. Blood is thicker than water, but apparently not thicker than money when there's 7 figures involved. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in March when I found David in my study, photographing my financial documents with his phone. "Mom, you scared me," he said, quickly shoving papers back into my filing cabinet. "Rachel asked me to grab your insurance information for that doctor's appointment you have." I didn't have a doctor's appointment. When I pointed this out, he laughed nervously and said he must have misunderstood. That afternoon, I changed the locks on my filing cabinet and moved my important documents to a safety deposit box at Chase Bank on Main Street. Here's the thing about adult children who decide their parents have lived long enough. They always think they're smarter than the generation that raised them. David started calling daily, not to chat, but to interrogate me about my health. "Mom, you seemed confused yesterday. Have you been taking your medications?" "I take 1 blood pressure pill and a daily vitamin." Rachel began dropping by unannounced with herbal teas and homemade soups. "You need to keep your strength up, Margaret," she'd coo, watching eagerly as I took the first sip. The first poisoning attempt was almost laughably amateur. April 18th, Rachel brought over her special mushroom soup, insisting I eat it while it was hot. The texture was grainy, unusual for her typically smooth bisques. I pretended to eat enthusiastically while actually depositing each spoonful into the potted fern next to my kitchen table. That fern was dead within 48 hours. I had the remaining soup tested by my friend Dr. Janet Wu at the hospital lab. It contained enough Amanita phalloides to shut down my liver within days. But that's not even the worst part. The same week, I discovered David had been visiting elder law attorneys, specifically ones specializing in guardianship proceedings. My neighbor Barbara, who works as a paralegal at Hoffman & Associates, recognized him in their waiting room and thought it odd since David has his own lawyer. She mentioned it casually at our Thursday morning walking group, not knowing she was potentially saving my life. I started recording everything, every conversation, every visit. The digital recorder I bought at Best Buy for $47.99 became my constant companion, hidden in my pocket or tucked behind picture frames. What I captured over the next 2 months would make your blood run cold. Rachel on the phone with someone named Vincent. "She's tougher than we thought. We need to increase the dosage." David to his business partner. "Once we have power of attorney, we can liquidate everything. The house alone will clear my debts. At my age, you learn that panic is a luxury you can't afford. Instead, I got strategic. I transferred the house deed to an irrevocable trust with my friend Martha's daughter, attorney Sarah Chen, as trustee. I moved $1.8 million to accounts David couldn't access, even if he did get power of attorney. I also started my own investigation into my son's financial situation. Turns out his company, Premium Solutions LLC, was hemorrhaging money. He owed $847,000 to various creditors and had been keeping it from Rachel, who had her own secrets. A gambling addiction that had drained their savings and maxed out 17 credit cards. The second poisoning attempt came through my medications. Rachel volunteered to pick up my prescription refill from CVS, such a thoughtful daughter-in-law. Fortunately, 37 years of teaching chemistry had given me a healthy paranoia about substances. I tested the pills using a kit I ordered from Amazon. The blood pressure medication had been replaced with digoxin, enough to cause a fatal heart arrhythmia. I kept taking the medication, but was actually swallowing sugar pills I'd substituted, while documenting everything with photographs and lab results. They thought I was just a helpless old woman, probably because I'd started playing the part. I began forgetting names, repeating stories, leaving the stove on when they were watching. David's eyes would light up each time I showed confusion. "Mom, I'm worried about you living alone," became his constant refrain. He didn't notice that my confusion only happened when he or Rachel were around, or that my neighbors saw me sharp as ever during our bridge games. May turned to June, and their desperation grew palpable. The house's property tax bill of $31,000 was due, and I knew David couldn't pay it without my help. He'd been counting on having control of my finances by now. Rachel started bringing Lily over more often, using my love for my granddaughter as a weapon. "Lily needs her grandmother," she'd say, while simultaneously telling anyone who'd listen that I was showing signs of dementia. The third attempt, the one that would have succeeded, was elegantly planned. They'd invited me to a family dinner at their house on Maple Avenue, a rare occurrence since Rachel usually claimed to be too busy. The table was set with the good china, candles flickering, Lily in her favorite purple dress. It felt like a farewell dinner, and in a way, it was. I watched Rachel prepare the coffee with unusual attention. She sent David to check on something upstairs, and Lily to wash her hands. Again. In those 30 seconds alone with the cups, she moved with practiced efficiency, powder dissolving instantly in the black coffee she knew I preferred. She even stirred it with her finger to ensure no residue remained, not knowing I was watching in the reflection of the china cabinet glass. When she turned to get the sugar bowl from the counter behind her, Lily appeared like a little ghost in the doorway. 7 years old, but those eyes, Frank's eyes, missed nothing. She looked at me, at the cups, at her mother's turned back. Without a word, she switched them, her small hands quick and sure. Then she climbed into her chair as if nothing had happened. "Coffee, Margaret?" Rachel asked, setting the cup in front of me with that practiced smile. "Thank you, dear," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic but not lifting it to my lips. Rachel sat down with her own cup, formerly mine, and took a large sip immediately. "I made it strong, just how you like it." Another sip. David returned, complaining about a leaky faucet. We made small talk about the weather, Lily's upcoming dance recital, the new shopping center being built downtown. Rachel finished half her cup before the first symptoms appeared. Her face flushed first, bright red like she'd been slapped. "Is it warm in here?" she asked, tugging at her collar. Then came the trembling, subtle at first, her hand shaking as she reached for her water glass. The glass slipped, shattering on the hardwood floor. I don't feel..." She stood abruptly, swayed, and collapsed, her body convulsing. David screamed. Lily sat perfectly still, watching her mother writhe on the floor with an expression I'd never seen on a child's face. Cold satisfaction. I called 911, my voice calm and clear. "My daughter-in-law is having some kind of seizure. 1847 Maple Avenue. Please hurry." Then I knelt beside Rachel, not to help, but to whisper in her ear, "How does it feel?" The paramedics arrived in 6 minutes. I handed them the coffee cup, careful to preserve the fingerprints. "She was drinking this when it happened," I said. "You should probably test it." David rode in the ambulance, leaving Lily with me. As soon as they left, she spoke for the first time. "Grandma, I knew what she was doing. I heard her on the phone with that man, Vincent. She said you'd be gone by tonight. 43 years of motherhood, and this is what it came to. My own son trying to murder me for money." The police were very interested in my recordings, especially the ones where Rachel discussed dosages with Vincent, who turned out to be her dealer in more ways than one. The lab found enough strychnine in that coffee to kill a horse. Rachel survived, but with permanent neurological damage. She'll spend the next 25 years in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, assuming she lives that long with her complications. David was arrested 2 days later at JFK Airport. trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with $73,000 in cash he'd borrowed from what he thought were private lenders, but were actually undercover FBI agents my friend Martha's daughter had connected me with. Turns out I wasn't the only elderly parent David and Rachel had tried to eliminate. Vincent had already confessed to 3 other similar schemes, all targeting wealthy seniors through their adult children. At my age, you'd think betrayal would hurt less, that you'd be too tired to feel the full weight of it. But discovering your only child values your bank account more than your heartbeat? That's a pain that transcends age. They threw me away like garbage, planned my disposal like I was an old appliance that had outlived its usefulness. The funny thing is, if David had just asked for help, told me about his debts, I would have given him the money. Not all of it, but enough to save him. Pride and greed make people stupid. I have custody of Lily now. The court decided quickly once they heard the recordings and saw the evidence. She's in therapy, of course, but Dr. Martinez says she's remarkably resilient. We planted a new garden together where that poisoned fern used to be. She chose sunflowers because they always face the light, Grandma. She's teaching me things I thought I knew about survival and choosing who deserves your loyalty. The house is quieter now, but not empty. Barbara comes for coffee every morning. Coffee I make myself, thank you very much. Martha's daughter Sarah checks in weekly, not as my lawyer, but as someone who's become like the daughter I should have had. The book club ladies have turned into a fierce protective squad, joking that they're my security detail. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down taught me to make real Chinese dumplings, not the frozen kind Rachel used to bring. Life at 72 isn't what I planned, but it's authentic in a way it never was before. I kept David's childhood room exactly as it was, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. His Boy Scout badges still hang on the wall. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, all the things he forgot how to be. Sometimes Lily goes in there and looks at pictures of her father as a child. "Was he good then, Grandma?" she asks. I tell her the truth. He was, sweetheart. People change, not always for the better. The financial aftermath was interesting. Since David and Rachel's actions were criminal, their debts couldn't touch my assets. The house remains in the trust, protected for Lily's future. I've liquidated some investments, setting up educational funds that neither parent can access even when David gets out of prison in 15 to 20 years. The $2.3 million they tried to kill me for is now worth about $2.7 million, thanks to some smart moves, Sarah suggested. Funny how clear your financial thinking becomes when you're not being slowly poisoned. Rachel's mother called me from Florida last week. "How could you do this to my daughter?" she wailed. I reminded her that her daughter had tried to murder me 3 times, that there were recordings, lab results, witnesses. "But she's a mother," she cried, as if giving birth somehow absolves you of attempted murder. I hung up. Some conversations aren't worth having. People ask if I forgive David. Forgiveness implies the relationship can be repaired, that trust can be rebuilt. You can't rebuild something that's been revealed to never have existed. What I had with David wasn't a relationship. It was a long con that started the day he learned about his inheritance. The son I loved, the one I thought I raised, either never existed or died somewhere along the way, probably drowning in debt and desperation. Vincent was sentenced to 30 years last month. He had a list of 17 names, all seniors with substantial assets and disappointing adult children. Mine was circled in red with urgent written next to it. The prosecutor called me brave for testifying. I'm not brave, I'm angry. There's a difference. Bravery is facing danger despite fear. Anger is facing danger because someone tried to take what wasn't theirs to take. Not just my money, but my remaining years, my chance to see Lily graduate, get married, have children of her own. The recovery hasn't been just legal and financial. The physical effects of the first 2 poisoning attempts linger. My liver functions at about 80% now, and I have peripheral neuropathy in my feet from the digoxin. But I'm alive, which is more than Rachel and David planned. Every morning when my feet hit the floor, I remember that they wanted me in the ground by now. It's actually quite motivating. Lily asked me yesterday if I was sad about Daddy being in jail. I told her another truth. I'm sad about who your daddy became, but I'm not sad that he's facing consequences. She nodded, understanding more than any 7-year-old should have to. "He made bad choices," she said solemnly. "Very bad choices." Then she asked if we could make chocolate chip cookies. And just like that, we were grandmother and granddaughter again, not survivor and witness. The irony isn't lost on me. David and Rachel spent 6 months planning my death, hiring help, buying poisons, consulting lawyers. They spent thousands of dollars they didn't have on this scheme. If they'd put half that effort into actual jobs or honest business, they wouldn't have needed my money. But that's the thing about people who choose murder over work. They always think they're taking the easier path. My will has been rewritten. Lily gets everything when she turns 25, but it's structured in a trust that releases funds gradually. College at 18, a house down payment at 25, the rest at 35. If something happens to me before then, Sarah Chen and Martha Phillips are co-trustees. Not a penny will ever flow through David's hands, even if he outlives me. The law might release him eventually, but I don't have to. Sometimes I walk past Rachel and David's old house on Maple Avenue. New families live there now, the Johnsons, nice people with twin boys. They painted it yellow, Rachel's least favorite color. The kitchen where she poisoned my coffee is now sunny and bright. Mrs. Johnson waves when she sees me, not knowing the history of her breakfast nook. That's probably for the best. Here's what I've learned at 72. Family isn't blood, it's choice. The people who choose to protect you, support you, believe you, that's your real family. Barbara, who noticed David at that law firm. Janet, who tested that soup, no questions asked. Sarah, who made my assets untouchable. Mrs. Chen, who taught me that starting over has no age limit. Even little Lily, who chose her grandmother's life over her mother's plan. These are my people now. The garden is thriving. Those sunflowers Lily planted have grown taller than both of us, their faces following the sun, just like she promised. We pressed some for her school project about resilience. Her teacher didn't quite know what to make of a 7-year-old's presentation on how plants and people survive poisonous environments, but she got an A+. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but sometimes it rolls away from the poison and finds better soil. Last week, I got a letter from David in prison. I didn't open it. Sarah offered to read it first, to filter it for manipulation or threats, but I declined. There's nothing he could say that would matter now. The son who would have had something worth saying wouldn't be in prison for trying to murder his mother. I used the envelope to test the new shredder I bought. It works perfectly. They thought I was just a helpless old woman, too aged and trusting to see the truth. They forgot that I'd spent 37 years teaching chemistry, recognizing dangerous reactions before they exploded. They forgot that I'd buried a husband, survived cancer, raised a child alone for years after Frank died. They forgot that old doesn't mean stupid, that gray hair doesn't indicate a gray mind. Most importantly, they forgot that mothers notice everything, even when their children are 45 and plotting murder. The coffee maker still sits on my counter, the same one from that night. I use it every morning, a small act of defiance. Rachel tried to turn my daily comfort into a weapon, but I took it back. Every cup is a tiny victory, a reminder that I'm still here despite their best efforts. Lily drinks hot chocolate from it, swinging her legs at the kitchen table, safe in a way she wasn't before. We're both free now, freed by her courage and my refusal to die on schedule. The story made the news, of course. Elderly woman survives murder plot by son and daughter-in-law. The reporters all wanted to focus on the tragedy of family betrayal, but I redirected them to elder abuse statistics, to the thousands of seniors who don't survive their children's greed. My 15 minutes of fame became a platform for advocating for better protection laws, mandatory reporting, stricter penalties. Rachel's sentence was actually one of the harshest ever given for attempted elder abuse murder in New York State. Good. Some people say I should feel guilty about Rachel's condition, the permanent tremors and cognitive damage from the strychnine. I don't. She chose the poison, prepared the dose, served it with a smile. That it ended up in her system instead of mine is justice, not tragedy. The universe has a sense of humor sometimes. Dark humor, but humor nonetheless. She can't hold a coffee cup steady anymore. There's poetry in that. Lily starts 2nd grade next month. Her teacher sent a note home about her emotional intelligence being remarkably advanced. I wanted to write back, "That happens when you save your grandmother from murder," but I just signed the permission slip for the advanced reading group instead. She doesn't talk about her parents much, but when she does, it's matter of fact. "They're in timeout for grown-ups," she says. A very long timeout. I'm teaching her chemistry now, simple things like how baking soda and vinegar react, why oil and water don't mix. She's fascinated by the idea that everything is made of tiny particles, that understanding their behavior helps you predict outcomes. Like people, she said last week. If you know what they're made of inside, you can guess what they'll do. 7 years old and already wiser than her parents ever were. The trust fund grows quietly, invested in boring but stable index funds. By the time Lily's 25, it should be worth about $4 million, assuming standard market returns. She doesn't know about it yet. For now, she's just a little girl who loves sunflowers and hot chocolate, who reads 3 grades above level and can spot a liar at 50 paces. The money will be there when she needs it, but the skills I'm teaching her now, those are the real inheritance. People sometimes ask if I'm lonely. The truth is, I was lonelier when David and Rachel were in my life, pretending to care while plotting my death. Now, surrounded by chosen family, teaching Lily, working with elder advocacy groups, my days are full in a way they never were before. Tuesday is bridge club, Wednesday is hospital volunteering, Thursday is the garden club, Friday is movie night with Lily. Weekends we explore, museums, parks, farmers markets. She holds my hand, not because she has to, but because she wants to. That's the difference. The sunrise looks different now, painted with knowledge I wish I didn't have but can't deny. My son wanted me dead. That's not a weight that ever fully lifts. But each morning, Lily pads into my room in her dinosaur pajamas, climbs into bed beside me, and we watch the light creep across the garden together. "Another day, Grandma," she says, like it's a celebration. And it is. Every day they failed to take is a day I get to keep. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.